If someone had told me years ago that my life, fragile and uncertain like a falling autumn leaf caught in a restless breeze, would become the vessel for a message that could change everything, I would have smiled politely and changed the subject. Floating somewhere between the storms and the steady sway of towering oak trees in Jacksonville, Florida, I grew up a child of quiet suffering, a soul whose body felt as delicate as the glistening dew resting on pine needles at dawn. From infancy, my existence was shadowed by an unnamed illness, invisible yet relentless. No doctor whispered a name, no medicine delivered a cure. Instead, there was the slow fracture of strength, the creeping weariness that turned simple days into battles. By the age of 10, I had grown intimately familiar with the sterile white walls of hospital rooms, the beeping of monitors, and the sterile smell of antiseptic. My world reduced to tubes, needles, and waiting. My parents, pillars of hope and faith, prayed over me every night, their voices weaving a fragile web of comfort in the looming silence. Outside, life moved on. Children played in the streets, their laughter drifting like sunshine into my quiet hospital windows. They climbed trees, rode bicycles, and dreamed freely. I watched them through glass, caught in the cusp of wishing to be like them, but knowing my body would never fully carry me there. Yet inside the depths of my weariness, something else stirred dreams. Strange dreams, vivid and strange. At times they were gifts, at times harbingers. I dreamed of flames that devoured cities, fierce and unyielding. I saw houses swallowed whole by a flood that breached all bounds, waters filling streets where laughter once reigned. I dreamt of faces, frightened and calling from rooftops, lost in a world inundated by an unrelenting tide. When I was 12, a particularly vivid dream haunted me, a vision of fires blazing across Atlanta, the orange glow lighting the sky with a fierce intensity. I awoke, heart pounding, unsure if it had been a nightmare or a premonition. Weeks later, the news broke of wildfires tearing through Atlanta's southern districts, forcing evacuations and leaving destruction in their wake. My mother clutched my hand, eyes wide and shimmering. "How could this be?" she whispered, the question hanging in the air between us. At that moment, I was no longer alone in my fears. Shortly after, I dreamed of water, relentless, rising, swallowing streets and homes in Kentucky. A disaster of historic floods left families displaced and communities torn asunder. Again, my nightmares had crossed into reality with chilling precision. My mother urged me to write down the dreams, insisting they were messages from God, warnings meant to prepare us. And so I wrote, pages and pages filled with images from the edge of sleep, dreams that felt like glimpses beyond a veil, threads weaving a pattern I could barely understand but could not ignore. My small blue notebook became a testament to hope and fear. The words etched within sought understanding in a world that often seemed indifferent. As the years dragged on, my illnesses grew more severe, the prayers more fervent, and my hope more strained. Friends drifted away, their laughter carried off by the winds of normalcy I could scarcely touch. My world contracted, tethered to hospital beds and whispered prayers, until one October night changed everything. That October night remains etched in my memory, not as a blur of pain, but as the moment when everything shifted. The air was thick, suffocating, my chest tight and lungs clamoring for breath as if they were drowning in waves with no shore in sight. My parents were frantic, their whispered prayers mingling with the distant sounds of sirens and hurried footsteps. The ambulance ride was a haze of flashing lights and muffled voices, but despite the chaos, I felt a strange quiet deep inside, a gentle voice beckoning me beyond the fog of fear. Lying pale and fragile on the hospital bed, I watched with eerie detachment as doctors and nurses did their urgent work. The beeping machines, clipped to my frail body, seemed to measure time slipping away. My mother gripped my hand, her warmth a tether pulling me toward life. Yet beneath her touch stirred the call of something else, soft, persistent, insistent. It whispered, "Awaken." Then, just as exhaustion threatened to overwhelm me, I felt myself lifting, rising above the cold sheets, the flickering monitors, the sterile hospital walls. I was weightless, free from the slow ache and fatigue that had defined my days. Looking down, I saw my earthly self, helpless but held safe by my mother's love and the care of strangers. I was invisible to them, yet I saw everything, all the moments I thought I had lost. The world melted away, and in its place grew a field bathed in golden light, stretching boundlessly beneath a sky alive with shimmering hues. The grass sparkled as if sprinkled with stars, and a gentle breeze carried a scent of jasmine and hope. I felt an overwhelming peace wash through me, soothing every wound, easing every fear. And then he appeared, the presence I had only known through stories and whispered faith. Jesus, radiant and tender, stepped through the light as though walls and space were no barrier at all. His hair glowed like threads of woven gold, and his eyes held every kindness I had ever yearned for. His smile melted the weight of years spent in sickness, filling me with a warmth that outshone the sun. Without words, he offered his hand, and the moment our fingers touched, I felt a surge of strength and love that reshaped my very soul. He led me to places woven with memories I hadn't dared to cherish. My school transformed before my eyes, classrooms aglow, hallways humming with unseen life. We moved through scenes of ordinary days, rendered sacred by the light around us. Finally, we stopped before a calendar hung in the hall, pages flipping forward on their own, poring over the days ahead. There, October 22nd, 23rd, and the 24th glowed with a golden brilliance, pulsing with meaning beyond what my heart could grasp. These days will mark a new beginning, his voice seeped deep into my being. A time when hearts will be tested and called to choose love over fear. I asked him, trembling, why these days? What will happen? A radiant calm settled over us as he explained that an event of great spiritual significance awaited, a moment when love would reach out to call his children home. Yet not all would be ready. Some hearts, closed by doubt or pain, would remain, lost and searching. Together we looked forward beyond the familiar, and I glimpsed a world at the brink, chaos mingling with hope, loss shadowed by the faint stirrings of redemption. The weight of the mission he gave me settled tenderly upon my shoulders, to carry this message of love and preparation back to the earth, to awaken hearts before the dawn. As I floated in the radiant light, my view expanded beyond the peaceful meadow and familiar faces of the departed. The landscape of earth unfurled beneath me, vast and vivid, a tapestry of human life caught between hope and despair. The scene shifted, and I found myself gazing into my school auditorium. It was filled with my classmates and teachers, their faces alive with laughter and conversation, oblivious to what was about to come. The walls, the chairs, the familiar sounds, all shimmered under a supernatural glow. Suddenly, a sound cut through the air, a pure, majestic trumpet call that resonated not only in the ears but deep within the soul itself. One by one, the people rose. Lightness filled their bodies as if gravity had reversed. Children soared beside elders. Friends and strangers alike were swept upward on a current of love and joy. I too felt the lifting, release from pain and fear for the first time in my life. Weightless and free, I rose higher, the world shrinking beneath us. But as the joyous flight continued, my heart pained at what I saw next. Below, faces froze in confusion, fear flooding their eyes. The ones left behind searched frantically, calling names, reaching for hands that were no longer there. Cars lost their drivers on busy streets, crashes and chaos erupting as the world struggled to comprehend the sudden absence. Fires ignited where no one tended the flames, and the silence of missing voices filled empty rooms. Jesus' voice was gentle yet solemn. Each heart chooses, Lily. Not all are ready, but your voice will help awaken many. I was shown the fragile threads of earthly life, families torn apart by loss, communities plunged into mourning, yet also those who opened their hearts in prayer and repentance. From rooftops and empty pews, people lifted their voices in hope and humility. I understood that even in loss, there was grace, a chance for those left behind to seek, find, and prepare. The urgency to share this message gripped me. It was not a call rooted in fear, but in hope, a plea to prepare with love, forgiveness, and open hearts. To pray not just for deliverance, but for healing and unity. To remember that every act of kindness, every whispered prayer, was part of a greater plan guiding souls toward reunion and peace. The moment of return came suddenly, as if pulled back through a winding tunnel of light that blurred my vision and quickened my heartbeat. I remember the sense of peace, of infinite love, slipping away as the warmth of the divine realm receded. My body, trembling and weak, jerked against the wires and monitors that kept me tethered to the physical world. The bright, radiant landscape was replaced by the harsh glare of hospital lights, and familiar voices echoed in the sterile air, doctors and nurses fighting to bring me back from where I had gone. As I opened my eyes, the world seemed both distant and intensely vivid. The beeping of machines, the humid smell of disinfectant, and my mother's tear-streaked face hovered just beyond my reach. Yet inside, I carried something new, a divine spark that glowing brighter than any hospital bulb. Though my body was still fragile, my spirit was aflame with a purpose I could no longer ignore. Days followed where I was caught between worlds, weak, yet filled with a quiet certainty. I could feel the layers of pain and fatigue, but underneath them was an undeniable truth. I had glimpsed something eternal, something I was now called to share. My first attempt to speak about it was trembling, unsure if anyone could understand what I carried. I told my mother about the luminous landscape, the faces of love and forgiveness, and the promise of a day when all sorrow would end. Her eyes filled with tears, not of fear, but of joy and hope. Through her, I felt the divine calling strengthen within me. I must tell the world of what I had seen, of the love beyond death that awaited everyone willing to believe. Slowly, I shared my story with others, family, friends, and strangers. It was not easy. Many dismissed me, calling my visions a product of my illness or a child's vivid imagination. But some listened with open hearts, eyes widened, spirits stirred, and those moments became seeds of hope. I learned to speak with compassion, patience, and conviction, knowing that every word might be the beacon that guides someone to love. People around me began to change. The fear of death that once haunted my family's conversations gradually softened. Hearts opened in ways I could not have imagined, strangers reaching out, communities praying together, and individuals forgiving wounds they had carried for years. Each act of love, each prayer, was a step closer to the divine plan, a plan I now knew I was part of. As I recovered, I carried the memories of my vision like a precious flame, nurturing it with every prayer and act of kindness. The spiritual awakening I experienced had reshaped my understanding of life and death, revealing that eternity is not distant but alive in every act of love we share here and now. The love I encountered beyond the veil was, I realized, waiting for each of us, an unbreakable promise that we are never truly apart. Months have passed since I returned to this fragile world, but the journey I began in that radiant place never ends. My body remains marked by weakness, but the spirit within me rises stronger each day, buoyed by the truth I saw beyond. I speak now not just for myself, but for all who long to know that love is real, real enough to lift us beyond death and pain. I tell those who listen that the days of October 22nd, 23rd, and especially the 24th hold a promise, not of fear, but of reunion and everlasting peace. A moment when love will come calling to bring his children home. This message is urgent, but it is also a plea for hope. I ask everyone to prepare, not by fearing what may come, but by opening hearts wide with forgiveness and kindness, to mend broken relationships, to say the words that have been left unsaid, to pray deeply and live fully, because the greatest journey is not always the one taken beyond the veil, but the one we travel here, in how we love, forgive, and embrace one another. Each small act of love creates a ripple in a vast sea of grace that connects us all. I believe now with every fiber of my being that none are forgotten, none are beyond the reach of this boundless love. The light I encountered is waiting for all of us. When the moment comes, and it will come, I want each heart to say yes to that call. Until then, I live to carry this message, to be a witness to the enduring power of love, to remind the weary and the lost that peace is possible in this life and beyond. This story is not mine alone. It is a story of hope shared with every soul willing to listen. And if it reaches even one person ready to open their heart, then my journey is worth it.